Hey guys, Zack here. Listen, today you're going to listen to the 7th of 10 Special Forces Journey podcast. So if you're lost as shit and you just stumbled in here, we're chronologically going through my path to becoming a Green Beret, okay? Now listen, we've also got some SEAL journeys and a MARSOC journey, and we're going to go through a bunch of different pipelines. So if you just stumbled on the page, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe. We'd love the support because we're going to dive through all these different phases. Now, onto my journey. If you've missed the first 6, go back, watch those. Right now, we're currently past selection. We're going into WLC or BLC, or that first leadership course that you get to after selection. Then we're going to dive into a phase called IUW that candidates right now going through the SF course actually don't have to hit. It was one of the most fucking gangster ones that there are. I lost a lot of good men out there. A lot of my good friends failed and never became a Green Beret, specifically because of IUW. And then after that, we start going into SUT, which is frankly the first time that you get to go out in the woods and learn infantry tactics and how to actually execute your dream and your job in the future. Now that's called tac skills, but it has the same understanding value, except now you go through your MOS phase first before you go to tac skills, which used to be called SUT. And there you learn inside of your MOS. So I kind of prefer the system that it is now, besides the system that it was, but dial in and listen to my journey as I went through, because there's going to be a lot of similarities for you when you go through your phase, with the addition now of understanding that you will have learned your MOS first. Buckle up, finish out the podcast strong with this, and hope to see you in the woods.
Hello, and welcome to the Operators Association podcast. I'm your host, former Green Beret, Zack Hughes. In the previous episodes, we've gone through what it looks like when you join the Army to become a Green Beret candidate, going through all the iterations of basic training, airborne school, subsequently moving to North Carolina, checking into Fort Bragg, heading to the preparation course, and then after that, going directly to selection, going through selection, everything that entails, and then completing selection, being picked up, and getting ready to move forward with actually being allowed to train to be a Green Beret. That's where we're going to kick this thing off. After you get picked up and you're selected for Special Forces training, you're still living in the barracks, regardless if you're married, regardless of anything. You haven't moved your family yet, regardless if you have children or anything like that. Everybody's in the barracks. So after you're done, that's really the first time that you can move your family, like we discussed in the last episode. So guys get time, possibly, to move their family, to get into an apartment, to get a home on base, to get a home off base. It really just depends on your situation. If you're single like me, you move into a different barracks that are a little bit better and that are closer to the Special Forces compound and the headquarters. After that, the very first thing you need to do is switch over all of your cadre members. So the cadre members that were in charge of you before selection continue, and they get a new group of guys who are about to go to selection. So now you have new leaders that you don't know, and you start the course for the very first phase. And for me, that was what's called WLC, Warriors Leadership Course. In the Army, it's also called BLC, Basic Leader Course. It's really the same thing. WLC is the SOCOM version of that. You'll hear it be called a number of different things. When I went through, it was at Camp McCall, so we went back out there. For a while, they moved it to Fort Bragg, and then they moved it back to Camp McCall. You can really expect a lot of changes in the Special Forces course throughout the time that either you're in, or you evolve, or you're even in basic training. It's going to look different by the time you get there than the time you're listening to this now. For me, we went to WLC back at Camp McCall. So our class had about 5 days after selection to start WLC. That's not necessarily common. Some classes have up to a month holdover. It's all based on scheduling, how many people get picked up, when the next WLC course is already projected to be. Really, they plan out the year very early on. So in October, they fill in all of the spots for all of these courses. And they know if there's going to be a holdover or not. Because we had 5 days in between selection and WLC, the guys in my class actually didn't get a chance to move their families. So a lot of them that were 18 X-rays that came from other states, they didn't get a chance to move their families until after WLC. What's typical is that you have a few weeks. And if you have a few weeks or up to a month, then you can move your families. You get time to sink in. Everybody's hanging out. There's not a lot of things going on during the week. And it's a little bit easier. For us, it was pretty compact. You can expect that throughout the time that you're in the Q course. Either it's going to be very compact where things are back to back, or you're going to have an extenuating, really holdover time in between things. So we get to Camp McCall. We're back out there. By now, we've got it kind of figured out. If you're an X-ray and you went through the prep course that was out there and then selection that was out there, Now you're at WLC that's out there. The Cadre members are still, you're the rookies, you're the freshmen, you're the new guys. So they're still giving you a hard time, but it's not nearly to the same degree or caliber as it was before selection, because you've passed selection and you're in. But the reality is a lot of people still fail out after selection. Most still fail out after selection. So basic leadership course goes over leadership. It goes over training management, goes over more in-depth map reading. It goes over land navigation again. They do some drill and ceremony stuff just to kind of check the box because the Army makes them. It's really a joke. More of the drill and ceremony is like PowerPoints that you look in and listen to. They start to discuss SUT and warfighting in general. BLC is really for any specialists or privates that are going to start to become a sergeant. So you're E1 through E4 and you're looking to become a sergeant, and you have to do this first. You have to go through this course in order to become a sergeant because of all of the training that's involved and all of the things you need to learn. So it's a lot of tests. You get a lot of time to study, but you've got to learn drill and ceremony. You've got to learn vocabulary. You've got to learn each of those 6 things that I just discussed. You have tests over. And at the end of it, there's an honor grad for that course who had the highest GPA, and that guy gets an ARCOM, which is an Army Commendation Medal. It's about 3 weeks long. It's actually pretty fun. I had a good time. You get email, you get computer access when I was there, and the computers had movies that were connected. Some guy got in trouble afterwards, and for a couple years, they didn't have computer access. So it really just depends on what's going on during the time frame that you show up. We had email addresses, or excuse me, we had email access, so we could write back to our families. We could contact them through email throughout the day because we're really in a classroom for most of it. And then at the end of it, you have an FTX, which is a field training exercise where you kind of combine everything you've learned. Nobody fails WLC. It's really starting to kick off your time as an NCO. You have to go through this course in order to become an E5. You don't become an E5 until you graduate, but you have to go through this course in order to be an E5. It's the very basic NCO leadership course. There's a lot of things that you learn that you're never going to use, like the drill and ceremony stuff. Our guys, all of our instructors are Green Berets. It's the SOCOM version of this course, so they try to cut out as much big Army stuff as they can. But at the end of the day, the Army controls who gets promoted and who doesn't, so they want to put in some of their stuff so that we all understand at least how to step, even though you'll never do it again. It's kind of a joke. Drill and ceremony in the Army is a big deal. Drill and ceremony as a Green Beret is laughable. You literally never do it. I think I did it. The most I ever marched was in basic training. We marched a little bit in airborne school. You'll march in some graduations for different courses, but you're never marching ever as a Green Beret. I mean, you're barely even wearing your dress uniform. But I think that the important portions of WLC is some of the leadership courses that you go through, some of the leadership techniques that they teach you. They teach you how to manage training, which is actually very important as a Green Beret, so you've got to pay attention to that. They double tap on map reading and land navigation, which you're going to be tested on again during another phase, so it's always good to continue to hone in that skill. Land navigation and map reading is something that you'll do at every school you go to and all these trainings that you go to, and you're tested on that as a Green Beret as well. So this isn't something that you can just kind of learn and then throw away after selection. You've got to stay sharp with that stuff. So it's really nice that they actually add this to this portion of the course. They dive into some very basic SUT stuff, warfighting skills in general. It's nothing crazy, but it's your first attempt at it, so it's really training wheels essentially. They talk through what a formation looks like. They talk through a couple of the very basic battle drills, how to attack, how to defend, how to react to contact. And this is really the first time you've ever seen this, so it's pretty cool. And almost everyone in the course is the X-rays because a lot of people that are coming to selection from the Army are E4 and above, so they've already done this while they're in the Army. So it's really just your entire class that you came through SOPSI with, the guys that passed. And you'll see randomly some guys will show up from the regular Army, but they won't be from your selection class because they get shipped back to their unit to move back, and they start the WLC portion months later. So if you're in the Army, you move back after selection, get your family, and then you get a PCS move back to North Carolina and then start WLC if you're an E4 or E5 who or lower that hasn't done it before. So you won't see anyone from selection that was in the Army at WLC, regardless if they haven't taken it, because they need to go back and move and then subsequently attend a later WLC course. It's really just the core group of 18 X-rays that you came with. After that, you got the graded test at the end. It's an FTX. It's one of the first times that you get to go out in the field and get graded on patrols and movements and battle drills and react to contact. It's pretty neat. You know, that stuff becomes really, really important later during SUT phase. Here, it's just super basic to start familiarizing yourself with it. You get actual weapons. You get to do actual weapon drills. You get blank rounds to shoot. Then you've got to clean them afterwards. So really some stuff that you did in basic training, but because it's not, frankly, as retarded as basic training, you get to have some fun with it, and you actually get to learn some stuff, and it's not all jam-packed into it. And everyone there is a Special Forces candidate, so you can ask questions. You really understand battle drills for the first time. You don't really understand them at all in basic training, frankly, because you don't have time to pick it up. And at the end of it, you're like, okay, cool. I've literally passed the first block of Special Forces instruction, and it's a good checkpoint, and it mentally gets you really focused for the next thing. I finished up and had about 3 months of holdover afterwards, 2.5 months. And it was because the winter months coming in. Not a lot going on in December, late November even, from these courses, because they have to give you off for Thanksgiving and they have to give you like 2 weeks off for Christmas. They typically don't schedule courses around that because you can't go to SEER and leave in the middle during holiday break leave. So they don't typically do a lot during November and December. SUTs, for a while, they were splitting it up. If you randomly needed to go to SUT during the Christmas, you would do 2 weeks before Christmas. You'd take 2 weeks off, and then you go do the other 2 weeks after Christmas. That's a tough one to go to, just because breaking it up is pretty miserable. Also, it's really cold during Christmas, and SUT in the cold is quite miserable. All right, so you're all done with WLC. You're back in. You're waiting on the next phase, whether that's a few weeks or whether it's a few months. Really just depends on what time of year it is and what's going on. And that next phase is IUW. Now, they've changed the name of IUW a few times, and they've kind of shifted around how it looks. But holistically, it's an introduction to unconventional warfare. So what you do in this phase is you repeat all of the gates, 12-mile ruck timed, 5-mile run timed, PT test graded, land navigation graded. All of that is conducted in this phase again. The land navigation is in a separate position, and it's actually harder than the STAR course, to be honest with you. And so many people fail it. 50% of our class failed IUW because of land navigation or the 12-mile ruck or the 5-mile run. Something happened, the PT test, and our class was cut in half literally during IUW, mostly because of land navigation. If some guys stumbled through selection in the STAR course for whatever reason, didn't learn much, didn't pick up any additional skills in WLC, and then just completely forgot about it until IUW, they're in trouble because you don't have another portion to retest or to try or to practice. Unlike selection, where you get classrooms and discussion and they teach you how to land nav, in IUW, they don't teach you anything. You can practice on your own, study on your own, but the instructors aren't putting you in a classroom, going through PowerPoints, handing out maps, showing you a protractor, taking you out to the woods. All that's gone. Now it's big boy rules. You've got to figure it out on your own. You've got to understand it. So guys are getting crushed in the IUW land navigation course. Literally harder than selection. You've got to have more points, and it's brutal. I lost a lot of good friends who I thought were going to become Green Berets in this portion of land navigation. A lot of guys came back afterwards, after a year, because they failed out at IUW land nav and they thought they could do it again. And then some of them became Green Berets eventually, some of them didn't. Hitting all the gates again, you've got to pass everything. Like the 12-mile ruck, got to crush it. PT test, got to crush it. Land navigation, got to crush it. All that stuff's got to happen. 5-mile run, same thing, got to kill it. But the great part about IUW is you really start to incorporate the unconventional warfare platform. You learn a lot of the soft attributes, and what really makes Green Berets is something they dive into. So once you get past all those gates, that's like the initial week or two. It's just nothing but graded exercises. And then after that, you're kind of good in terms of passing the course. Now it's time for you to learn what a Green Beret does, what special operations does, what unconventional warfare really is, how that looks. Unconventional warfare, you dive into it so deep here for the first time in your life, and it's really awesome. The basic premise of unconventional warfare is the support of a foreign insurgency or resistance movement against its government or occupying power. You dive into that, you will know that definition like the back of your hand. It contrasts conventional warfare in that its forces are often covert and not well defined, and it relies heavily on subversion and guerrilla warfare. You are learning guerrilla warfare here. All right, so there you learn the principles of war, the soft imperatives, the soft truths, and the 9 missions that Special Forces soldiers encompass. Principles of war are pretty long. There's an acronym for that. It's called MOOSMUS. It's definitely interesting. You're going to dive into it really, really deep. The soft imperatives, there's quite a few of those. It's something that you'll learn and you'll see, but it's not something that you typically will use often on the Green Beret team. And the soft truths is actually very important, and that's something that you'll use all the time. And we can just dive into a few of them right now. Basically, soft truths: humans are more important than hardware. The people on the teams are more important than the equipment we have. Quality is better than quantity. Better Green Berets are better than more Green Berets. Soft cannot be mass produced, so we can't just put all these Green Berets on an assembly belt and push them out. Competent soft cannot be created after emergencies occur. If something happens right now and there's a tragedy, another 9/11, tomorrow we can't just have an additional 10,000 Green Berets. That's not how it works. Most special operations require non-special operations support. We have to have support from the regular army, from the regular military. We can't do our job without support from them. They have the infrastructure. There are 9 missions. Special forces include unconventional warfare is the first one. FID is the second one, so foreign internal defense. SFA, or security forces assistance, is the third one. Counterinsurgency is the fourth. Direct action is the fifth. Special reconnaissance is the sixth. Counterterrorism is the seventh. Counterproliferation is the eighth. And then information operations is the ninth. Number one, what you're going to be doing is either unconventional warfare or direct action. But you dive in deep to all 9 of these during the IUW phase, and you understand exactly what they are and what your role is as a Green Beret specific to each of those 9 missions. After IUW is ended, you've passed everything, you've gone through and you've really understood what unconventional warfare is. You've taken a good hard look at everything. You've passed all the tests. You get a very distinct view of what Green Berets are after IUW, and you see the difference between Green Berets and Rangers, Green Berets and infantry, Green Berets and any of Navy SEALs, any other soft or regular unit. You can tell the difference after IUW very clearly because you go through case studies and you read these things. And you understand that unconventional warfare is the way of the Green Beret, and it's not the way of really any other soft unit, minus maybe MARSOC now, but they're not really getting into it as much as they should, as they want to. But their mission is very similar now. After you finish IUW, I didn't have that long of a holdover in between. I had a few weeks off, and then we went straight into SUT. And SUT is the squad and unit tactics, 6 weeks of patrolling in the woods, where you learn at a very, very high level how to shoot, move, and communicate as a Green Beret. You're learning all of the battle drills in detail. So during SUT, you're learning the science and the art of all these tactics. You're going through all the different fundamentals of offense, the forms of each maneuver. You're diving into the fundamentals of defense. To begin with, it is very tactical, operational, theory-based, and then you go learn it afterwards. You talk about the fog of war. You understand tactical success. You go through the OODA loop process, if you guys are familiar with that. If not, Google it. It's pretty neat. You dive into every single option during actions on contact, which is a term you'll hear so much during those 6 weeks. This is really your introduction to planning an operation. What you don't think of when you think about being a Green Beret is planning, but that's something that our Ranger brothers don't really do. If you're a Green Beret, you have a very distinct job and you have to plan your operations. If you're a Ranger on a squad, you just kind of do what you're told. You're not the captain, but an NCO on a Special Forces team really commands the entire life cycle of an operation. You've got to do the operations order. You've got to do the warning order. You've got to understand the doctrinal tasks and purpose. You've got to do everything all the way down, just like in Ranger School, just like anywhere else. But it's really important for Green Berets to pioneer this, because when you get to Afghanistan, that's exactly what you do. You do all of this. You're not just taking direction from someone else. You've got to go through very, very, very detailed on exactly what you're going to do. You dive in not only to those things, but you also really hone in on all the react to contacts, squad attacks, break contact, combat patrols, ambush patrols, all the different types of ambushes. It is how to move effectively in the woods during war. That's what SUT is. You get really, really, really granular in how to do a patrol base, how to prepare for a patrol, how to do recon patrols, how security patrols look, how to do a raid in an urban environment, how to do a raid in an open environment, how to do a raid in a rural environment. SUT absolutely sets you up for success in terms of being a proficient Green Beret and leading troops in the battlefield. And this is why a lot of guys that become Green Berets don't want to go to Ranger School, because Ranger School is SUT, but frankly, a little bit more dumbed down, a little bit harder on your body, a little bit worse mentally for you, because they just tell you you're an idiot all the time and talk down to you and you're not an adult. And you don't get the level of knowledge that you get in SUT in terms of squad and unit tactics.